Hi, welcome back to the workshop. Those of you that have witnessed a few of my builds will look at the decor and instantly know what's going to happen this week. But for those of you that don't, it's time to get some paint on this guitar body. Okay, in the last episode we cut the neck pocket in the body and we made a scratch plate, which were the last two big jobs regarding the body that we needed to get out of the way. Now it might seem logical to crack on with the neck now and get that kind of nearer this stage than it is at the moment. However, with the issue I'm having with the bowing in the neck, I've decided to leave that as long as I can before I go any further with it. So in this episode, I'm going to crack on with the body, get it painted, then this can be sat drying somewhere nice and warm while we do the work on the neck. And then we can come back and polish this and it should be nice and hard and ready to take a good polish. The first step in all of that is just to make sure that there's nothing else that we need to do before we do any finishing work. So to that end, I've done a little bit of work off camera. Now in the last episode, we had this little bit of errant wood that was at the side of the neck pocket. So I've trimmed that down, got rid of that. So that's as it should be now. And I've also put a little routing in front of the neck pocket. And that is because I'm going to turn the truss rod round in the neck so it adjusts from the heel, and this little cutout will enable me to adjust it on the guitar. I'm not sure I'm going to put a similar cutout in the pick guard or whether I'm going to make it so that you have to take the pick guard off to do it. Either way, it's much easier than taking the neck off and trying to guesstimate an adjustment on the truss rod. So that's why I've done that. What I've also done is I've fitted this out and fitted the pick guard in position, and then I've just very quickly marked around this area to make sure it's kind of sitting centrally to the control cavity so that that's going to be properly covered when we fit the pick guard. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do a quick dry run assembly. So I'm going to put everything onto the guitar, I'm going to fit the controls to the pick guard, I'm going to temporarily fit the neck, just to make sure that everything fits as it should do. Then I'm going to drill and screw the pick guard in. So that's done before we do anything else. I'll fit the strap buttons. There's not really much else to fit after that. What I'm not going to fit at this stage is the bridge, because the neck really isn't anywhere near where it needs to be for that. So I'll probably have to fit the bridge once the body's painted and we do the final setup. It's not ideal, but in this situation it's probably the safest bet because it means I'm not going to put the bridge in the wrong position. Okay, so let's get this thing fitted out. Okay, so that's all fitting really nicely. So I'm just going to go around now and screw the pick guard into position. Okay, and there we have everything fitted on, bar the bridge. So that's everything on, everything fits great. I'm really happy with the way that's gone together. So now the next step is to take it all off again. Okay, with everything off again, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to take a drill with a countersink bit in, and all of these little holes I've just drilled on the surface of the body, I'm just going to countersink them ever so slightly. What's happened is, as the screws have gone in, they've pulled the grain up a little bit, so there's always a little bit of a lump. So the countersink will get rid of that, but also what it will help do is when this is painted and I'm flattening it, those countersinks will stop me breaking through on the edges of these drill holes. And as you can see there, it really is a very slight countersink. Okay, there we are, we're ready for sanding now. I've probably got a couple of hours worth of sanding to do on this thing, so I'm not going to film too much of it. And once I've done that, I'm going to get some grain filler onto this. So I'll join you back in a little while once the sanding's done, and we'll start to go about grain filling. Okay, so I've just given this the mother of all sanding sessions. It's rubbed down all over to 220 grit. So I've done the edges and all the roundovers and these kind of cutaways by hand, and then I've just done the top and the back with my double action sander, and it's really nice, feels lovely. And what I'm going to do is, it's what I did on the last build, I'm just going to mix some of this joint filler up and use that as a pore sealer. In the last build I coloured it really dark grey to give a contrasting effect, but obviously this is going to be painted, so I'm just going to leave this natural kind of white, and hopefully that will give me a really good base for when I get to put some sanding sealer on it and finally paint it. So first job is I'm going to do the back first, just to literally mix some of this up. It mixes up really well, really quickly. The reason I use this stuff mainly is because it's dirt cheap. I think this tub cost me about £3 or £4 years and years ago, and I've got multiple builds out of that, and I'm not even halfway through the tub yet. But it does a really good job, dries nicely, doesn't shrink back too much. As long as it's dry when you sand it, it's fine. And it takes a finish really nicely too. And all I'm going to do is literally just smear it across. I like to go diagonally across the grain. And I like to use my fingers just on these roundovers. Looks good. Now before I do the top, I need to do something with all these little screw holes that I've put in, because I don't really want them filling up with grain filler. So I'm just going to stick a cocktail stick in them. And then just do the rest like I did the back. Okay, and that's it. Now, that looks quite a mess, but it's already drying, but I'm going to leave that overnight now, come back to it tomorrow, and it'll be nice and hard, and we can just give that a quick sand off. It does sand off really quickly, and it doesn't take long to get this back down to where we need it. Okay, so this has been left overnight now. It's all hardened up really nicely, so first thing I'm going to do is just take out these little cocktail sticks. And then I'm going to give this a rub down with some 220 sandpaper. Okay, so this is all sanded off now to 400 grit, feeling lovely, and we're pretty much ready to go for finish. But I've just got one last little job that I need to do, and that is to drill out for the bridge ground wire. So I'm just going to take a nice long 6mm drill bit, and I've made a little mark underneath where I know the bridge is going to be. So I'm going to drill in just a little way downwards first. And from there, I'm going to angle my bit and start working my way through. It's actually quite a short run, so it's not kind of quite as dodgy as some of them might be. I'm just going to get an idea of what my angle needs to be, and then we'll start drilling. Nearly there. There we have it. Looks a little bit unsightly, but that will all be covered up by the bridge, so it's not a problem. I wished I had a kind of a set of long series drill bits, and I could have put a much smaller hole through, which wouldn't have left such a big mark, but at the end of the day it's all going to get covered up, so it's not massively important. Okay, so this has all been sanded back now. It's beautiful and smooth. I've mounted it on my impromptu painting stick, which will just allow me to turn this over on the bench and get both sides. And first off, I'm just going to give it a couple of coats of cellulose sanding sealer. I'll give this 2 coats, probably 15-20 minutes between coats, and then leave that for a few hours to dry off, and then we'll just give that a nib off, make sure it's all smooth, fix any defects that it might kind of bring to light, and then we can get on with the painting. Okay, so I ended up giving this about 4 coats of sanding sealer, and I just kind of nibbed it off between each coat, and then I've left it overnight to dry up. Now it doesn't take long to harden up this sanding sealer, and it's gone on really nicely. It's nice and flat, nice and smooth. So all I'm going to do now is quickly go around with some 400 wet and dry and just make sure I get rid of any little high spots or rough patches. Okay, with that done, we can get it back onto its painting stick and start to prepare for the final finishing process. Okay, so to put the finish coats on this guitar, I've got some Olympic White nitrocellulose paint. This is from Northwest Guitars. I've used their paints before. If any of you watched the White SG Junior build that I did a few months ago, I used the same paint on that guitar and it was great. Really worked nicely. Okay, so I'm going for probably 3 or 4 coats on this. And the first coat is going to be quite thick, so I'm not really going to thin it that much. So just put a good amount of that paint in. And I've given this a good mix up previous to filming. And I'm just going to give that a little splash of thinners. Okay, so I'll get that in the gun, get my mask on and get the first coat on. Okay, and there we have the painted body. It's looking very flat at the moment. What happens in an unventilated shop like this one, doesn't really matter how well you spray the finish on, all the overspray that's in the atmosphere will get drawn onto the wet finish, and you'll end up with a pretty flat looking paint job. It's not a massive deal. This is going to have to be kind of flatted and polished up anyway, so we'll get rid of that flatness very easily. I spoke earlier on when I was pour filling this about the chance that the grain pattern in the wood was going to kind of show through this finish. And what I mean by that is not kind of the small microscopic pores in the timber, but the actual growth rings. And I always find it is a bit of an issue with ash to get that to flatten off fully. I can see it through this finish. It's not terrible. It's not the worst thing I've ever seen in the world. I don't think I'm going to be able to fully flatten it out without burning through the paint. So once this is done, there is the chance that you'll be able to see that through the paint job. To be honest, I'm happy with that. It's something I expected to happen as soon as I decided to use ash. Other people might not have this issue. If you've got any solutions to it that doesn't involve massively thick filler coats or paint jobs, please let me know. But it is what it is, so I'm fairly happy with that. Okay, so I'm going to leave this body in the workshop for a few days to harden up a little bit and to become a little bit less stinky. Then I'll move it inside the house where it's warmer, so it can be curing. I'm probably going to leave it for a couple of weeks. I haven't got as much time as I would normally leave them, but I'm sure in this case it'll be absolutely fine. But of course what this all means is that the work on the body is done for a little while, which means we can drop back onto that errant neck and see if we can get that sorted out. So I'm going to be back in a couple of days when we'll start working on the fretboard. So until then, if you've enjoyed the video, like. If you haven't already done so, hit that subscribe button and I'll look forward to seeing you very soon. Thanks a lot for watching. Bye bye.